Would you confiscate guns if given federal orders to do so?
You're asking me hypotheticals.
Yes, that's
not going there. Hypothetical.
Would you?
Again, I can't even begin to guess what I would do as far as the hypothetical situation you're speaking of. I haven't been given an order like that. So.
We can't have a totally armed society.
Easy to shoot, big clips, 100+ bullets in each, large velocity guns.
I'm not a sixth grader. Senator, I've been on this committee for 20 years. I was a mayor for 9 years. I've seen the bullets that implode. This does not prohibit. You use the word prohibit. It exempts 2,271 weapons. Isn't that enough for the people in the United States? Do they need a bazooka?
If I could have gotten 51 votes in the Senate of the United States for an outright ban, picking up every one of them, Mr. and Mrs. America, turn them all in, I would have done it.
Give me liberty or give me death!
First off, I want to salute everybody who came out here in defiance of tyranny. Civilizations go one way or the other. You either become more free or you become enslaved. And there are only a few countries worldwide where you can still own firearms. Governments worldwide, controlled by powerful anti-free market corporate interests like Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, and others, have financed programs from Australia to France, from England to South Africa, to disarm the people. Whether it was King George 235 years ago who wanted disarmed slaves, or whether it was Santa Anna 177 years ago, or whether it was Adolf Hitler or Mao Zedong, these scumbags are all the same. They are bullies that think we're going to lay down to them and lick their boots. I can assure you that if William Barrett Travis was here, or the others that died in this sacred shrine were here, they would give us a rebel yell of liberty. I can assure you they knew full well they were going to die, but they were so angry watching people tied up and shot in the back of the head all over Texas because they wouldn't turn their guns in that they came down here to show an example of what you do in the face of tyrants. And that's what you're doing here right now, today. That's right. And I'll tell you, I'm no different than my ancestors. You're no different than your ancestors. My ancestors on both sides of my family started the Texas Revolution. And I'm here to tell you that revolution was a continuation of human beings fighting against bullies and tyrants in every civilization throughout history. And this is the struggle of the individual against the bullies and the tyrants. And I salute you all for being here today. This is the heart of 1776. It wasn't one of the reasons that the war against King George began. It was the central, main, final reason at Lexington and Concord. And it wasn't one of the reasons there was a rebellion against the dictator Santa Anna, later thrown out in Mexico proper. It was the main central reason they met at Washington on the Brazos, where my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather heirs helped kick the whole thing off to say we're not turning our guns in and we're not running and we're not backing down. If you want them, come and take them. And make no mistake, the entire world is watching us. There are shrines in here sent from places like Japan. And our fight for liberty includes every man, woman, and child, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, old, young. It doesn't matter. You have a right to self-defense, and that's what this is all about. Dianne Feinstein, Handgun Control Incorporated, the few dozen Democratic Party operatives they're going to have marching here in a little while, the so-called moms. They are here to disarm you while Homeland Security buys tens of thousands of armored vehicles and buys billions of bullets and trains with paper targets of little children. As Patrick Henry said, they're already gearing up. They're already getting ready. These weapons are for us and none other. And that's why we're here in defiance. And I will assure you, I will tell you right now, that if the people that died here could see us now, and I believe they can, they would be proud of each and every one of you. And I salute you again.
I'm going to say hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to say hello, brothers and sisters. You are what makes life worth living.
You are!
You, the people that stand up for liberty, that's willing to take a stand, no matter what that stand costs us. It's time that we wake up the sleeping giant. When I was 10 years old, I started packing one of these.
Yeah, boy.
And I've had a gun on me or near me the rest of my life. I've hunted for meat, and I've never shot anybody, accidentally or otherwise. Guns don't kill people unless there's somebody behind them purposely killing them. Our government stinks. And I would say 75% of American citizens are captured by a stinking government and a television. Turn off your television and do some investigating. Join Oath Keepers. He can put you in action. Here I am. And I can be sat at home in a comfortable chair. But I'd rather be here. You don't know how thrilling it is to look out and see all you people all around here that are taking a stand for our freedom, not for our government. I'm a constitutionalist, 100%. We need the Constitution Party to come into everybody's home, and we need to vote for people that believe in the Constitution will stand up and defend it with their life. I think I've said enough. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Americans from all over the country showed up at the Alamo, baby.
Yes.
Openly carrying the firearms that they could lawfully carry in Texas openly. You can't carry a pistol in Texas openly, but you can carry a long gun.
Yes.
David Codrea joins me now. He's going to stay with us for the remainder of the show. We're going to discuss this and what happened there, and his good friend, our good friend, your good friend, Mike Vanderboe, spoke at that rally. And we're going to hear what Mike had to say. Incredibly insightful stuff. Let's go directly first now to David Codrea, a great friend of the show. David, how are you, my friend?
Mark, I'm doing great, and, you're absolutely right. And when we talk about the Alamo, when we talk about Mike's speech in particular, we could go a lot of different directions with this. We could go the direction of how 500-600 people showed up, they were armed, and lo and behold, they behaved peaceably. We can talk about how they dwarfed the numbers of people at the Moms Demand Action rally down the street, which shows you where the true grassroots activism really comes from. But I think what Mike is going to tell us about is the fact that, we have people right now like Representative Steve Cohen of Tennessee who's saying that the Tea Party Republicans are the domestic enemies that the Constitution warned us about. We have this idiot named Old Mark, no offense to you, he's on the Daily
None
Cross,
taken.
And he's got a petition basically to charge and arrest the current House GOP leadership with sedition. And so this goes to the heart of what Mike spoke at the rally about. I think that there's no better introduction than just say, hi, Mike, what'd you talk about?
Mike Vanderboe, welcome to Armed American Radio again. What'd you talk about? Give us the lowdown.
Well, thanks for having me.
Sure.
What I talked about was whether or not we're one country or two. Really, the answer to that question is up to the other side and not to us. I mean, right now there's a growing thought abroad in the land that we are, in fact, two countries sharing a common border and mostly a common language, but divided along the answer to the question, does the government serve the people or do the people serve the government? I mean, Mika Brzezinski of MSNBC accused Senator Ted Cruz of not being loyal to or caring about, quote, the country, Now, as far as I'm concerned, Ted Cruz is loyal to my country, and to his, which is the founders' republic. But it's also obvious that Mika Brzezinski does not believe that he is loyal or cares about her country. So, I reckon if you believe her, then we are, in fact, two countries. But the point of the question, though, is, the answer cannot be finessed. It can't be compromised. It can't be negotiated. It's either one or the other. It's either all of one or all of the other. It's either that of individual liberty or of the collectivist Borg. And, for our part, we'd be happy to just be left alone. But the collectivist impulse, that tyrannical appetite, can't be readily denied by its practitioners. It's an addiction for which there's no easy 12-step program. And people who possess this insatiable appetite for other people's liberty, property, and lives can only be deterred by the compelling and credible counter-argument that such appetites come with personal consequences for them, consisting at least of a bad case of indigestion and, if necessary, broken teeth.
Mike, that David cut in here for a second. That goes to the heart of, the real reason why the founders had the Second Amendment, and it's why groups like CSGV, the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence, formerly and still the National Coalition to Ban Handguns, and they want to call people like us insurrectionists, and they want to say that we are guilty of treason. And, it goes back to like that cartoonist Ted Rall saying that he wants to take people like us and bundle us off to Bagram. And if you think about what that really means and what these people really want, I'm not giving up my arms when I know such enmity out there exists.
Let me go right to this one. Lest anybody think that the other side, the collectivists, the people who want your property, your liberties, your guns, and so forth, lest anybody think that they don't believe what they say, that they're only grandstanding, does so at their own peril, don't they, Mike?
Absolutely. Now, you have in this collectivist universe the power at the center, who know very much what they're about. But then you have this, sort of nebula of useful idiots. And, many of these people are quite sincere and believe that they are motivated by some benevolent idea. But the fact of the matter is the people that call the shots are the people that know that this is about power. It's about serving the elite, of which they are a member, and they will do anything, tell any lie, in order to feed their appetite, in order to aggrandize their power. So, no, you shouldn't have any illusions about collectivists. And one of the things I tried to get across to people was that our constitutional rights are not subject to the anti-firearm neuroses of our liberal neighbors, nor those of nervous public officials. A right is a right. And, I caused a stir by pointing out that Chief McManus of San Antonio was no different than Bull Connor in Birmingham in 1963.
Why did people show up at the Alamo? What was it that brought 400 to 500 law-abiding citizens out in full force, peacefully? And what was it that they were, in fact, fighting for?
This segment of Armed American Radio is being brought to you by the Gun Owners of America, America's no-compromise gun lobby. Become a member today. Visit gunowners.org. Join them, folks. I did. Welcome back.
And we're talking with Mike Vanderbo, someone you know very well. You guys work very closely together, did some significant work on Operation Fast and Furious. In this particular case, Mike, welcome back to the show. You were in San Antonio over the weekend, and you spoke at the Alamo. Tell us why 400 people plus or 500 people plus showed up there. What sparked it?
Well, try 600. That's my best guess. the original incident took place in a Starbucks in San Antonio, where three folks, exercising their rights under Texas law, were open carrying rifles, which were not loaded per Texas law. These rifles apparently made someone nervous who called the cops. The cops came and decided, and this is on YouTube, you can find it on the net, the entire incident, because it was filmed. And the cops decided that these people were guilty of disorderly conduct simply by virtue of the fact that they had the rifles and other people were made nervous by them. The police chief, in fact, when it was pointed out to him that they were within Texas law, made a comment that he didn't care whether it was within the law or not. He was responsible for keeping order in San Antonio, and that's what was going to be. And that's like straight out of the mouth of Bull Connor in Birmingham in 1963.
Right.
Connor denied the rights of African Americans here. Martin Luther King famously tried to get a pistol permit and was turned down. Connor himself was very much pro-Klan, and he's the fellow who, when the demonstrations took place, refused to allow them to have permits, and then turned the dogs and the fire hoses on even children. So, my point of the speech was that McManus was simply enforcing the leader's political opinions under color of law, much as Bull Connor did in 1963. And, if you enforce your own opinion under color of law and it's not law, well, guess what? That's itself illegal and unconstitutional, okay? And for a police chief to say that he doesn't care what the law says, what is more dangerous than that?
Well, that gets to the very root of the word tyranny. That's the beginnings of tyranny.
Exactly.
It's the beginnings of the trappings of tyranny. It's an abuse of power at the highest level. So you're right. There has to be that root basis that we cannot deviate from under law just because you don't like it. Now we've seen that. We see Eric Holder and Barack Obama enforcing, picking and choosing, and not enforcing laws they like or don't like. Very, very, very dangerous. Now, one thing on this program we're not going to do here is we're not going to debate the whole should they have been at Starbucks. Well, I don't want to go into the Starbucks debate with us. What we're talking about is what kicked off, the incident that kicked off this massive rally, peaceful rally at the Alamo. So lead us into what happened there.
The arrest of these fellows outraged all Texans, especially the attitude of the chief of police and the San Antonio mayor and the city council. And they determined that they were going to do something about that. And so they sought permission and got permission to have a rally at the Alamo. And it was an armed rally. And the Alamo is state property. San Antonio couldn't do anything about that. But at the end of the rally, all of us, armed with rifles, unloaded in the chamber, but with loaded magazines, then marched to a local park about 3 blocks away in violation of their interpretation of what they say is the law. And we essentially dared them to do anything about it. And you know what? They didn't do a thing. They blinked. They allowed us to march to the park, have a small rally, and then we dispersed. Everything was peaceful. There were some folks that were not exactly counter demonstrators, but rabid anti-gun folks who got in the middle of us and tried to start arguments. We in a couple of places we had to get the San Antonio police to counsel them not to do that,
right.
But we didn't react to it. But the point was, and you can make of it what you will, but armed civil disobedience worked in this case. We told them, we're armed, we're marching, we're defying your interpretation, your actions under color of law. Do something about it.
Interestingly, McManus, Mike, was asked why he didn't do anything, and I'll have to pull the exact quote up. I'll paraphrase. He said, well, there's too much going on here now. It's too complicated of a situation. We have officers outside the perimeter, and I guess there was a large police presence outside the perimeter. He said, but our number one goal here and our number one focus is that they be able to exercise their constitutional rights. And I thought, wow.
Well, why didn't he let the guys at Starbucks exercise their constitutional rights and their rights under Texas law?
Exactly. There's the hypocrisy there because he didn't like that. Now, I guess he's got himself in a little bit of a jam. This is an unsettling topic that people don't like to talk about, so I'm going to talk about it with you. Civil disobedience. What is civil disobedience, as Mike referred to? What does that mean?
Civil disobedience, as far as I'm concerned, is a moral concept. It is the same concept that Rosa Parks applied when she would not take a back seat on the bus. It's Henry David Thoreau wrote just the greatest treatise. If you haven't read it, it's available on the Internet. Please do. Civil disobedience is what the original defenders of the Alamo were engaging in against illegitimate armed government authority. And the Alamo, if you've never been there, I have. It is the closest thing to a shrine for liberty. It is hallowed ground.
Yes, it is.
The patriots of the Alamo had to be smiling on the action that took place this weekend, and the fools who were engaging the armed protesters were actually, they were the ideological descendants of the people who would cheer on Santa Anna to crush out liberty. And, for people to say, well, we're afraid of guns and they make us feel unsafe. Well, it didn't make them feel so unsafe that they weren't out there taunting, armed people who, by virtue of the fact that we have self-control and don't need their stupid gun control, exhibited that self-control. And the one point that I would like to touch on is with the tyranny that we were talking about in the previous segments, that is only enabled by the police that go along with it and enforce. The people who are going to follow McManus's orders, and they're going to arrest people for exercising their rights lawfully. And I know that Stuart Rhodes with the Oath Keepers organization had a presence there. And I guess I'd like to ask Mike at this point, did you get a sense that Stuart's group was making inroads with some of the rank and file that were watching the proceedings?
Yes, they did, and actually I should explain something real quick. Why nothing happened was, first, we had some 3%ers in the San Antonio Police Department. They told us that the orders were going out for harassment and interdiction of people as they were coming to the rally. This led us to write an open letter to the mayor and to the city council and say, look, guys, you're self-insured. If anything happens here, not only will your city be responsible, but under Texas law, you personally can be held responsible for any malfeasance or illegality on the part of your police department. I founded the modern 3% movement several years ago. It harkens back to the American Revolution, where only 3% of the colonists actually took the field actively against the king. It follows along the idea that history is made by determined minorities, and that there are 3% today as there were 3% in the Revolution. Indeed, in the Bible, when Gideon sorts out his 10,000 men and observes who's drinking water and being tactically aware about it, he sorts out 600 of them, which happens to be 3% of his force. So the 3% goes back all the way to the Bible, but basically we're 3% of American gun owners, and we say we're not going to disarm. You can't intimidate us. You can't convince us. You can kill us if you think you can, but remember, we'll shoot back. So we had sources within the SAPD that told us that they really intended to crush us if they could. And so we sent the letters to the mayor and the city council, emails and such, and said, look, are you sure you want to go down this road? That was the first thing. The second thing that changed their mind was the fact that there were hundreds of us there. had there been, some sort of tactical opening, I suspect the chief might have gotten sort of Bull Connor on us. But we now know from sources that we hear that the city council is very upset with the chief because he picked a battle that he didn't win. And, collectivists always insist that if you're going to do something, you better be successful. And the chief has now got them in a bind. Everybody knows that going forward from this, there are going to be legal challenges to another Starbucks incident. And we have laid the predicate for the city and them personally to be sued. And they are not happy at us, but they are most especially not happy at Chief McManus. Go figure. I'll tell you a funny story real quick. When Bob Wright, my friend from New Mexico, was walking away from the rally, there was McManus. And McManus pointed behind Bob and said, is that one of yours? And Bob turned around, and here was some moke who was coming from a party or something, and he's dressed as Darth Vader. And without missing a beat, Bob turns to McManus and says, no, that's one of yours. He's from the dark side.
Oh, wow.
One of the things I told the assembled folks is that when democracy turns to tyranny, the armed citizenry still gets to vote. And this is not sedition. It is not insurrection. It's a philosophy that the founders embodied and would endorse today, as would the men who died at the point of Mexican bayonets behind those walls that we stood in front of, We're not revolutionary. We don't want to overthrow the government. We simply want to restore it to the founders' model of what a republic should be. It's that other determined minority of the progressives, the collectivists, call them what you will, who spent the last century, waging a quiet revolution against the Constitution and the rule of law of the founders' republic. If you want to be precise, we're the forces of counter-revolution. We're the forces of restoration. And when government, like San Antonio, violates the Constitution, breaks the law, when we say we're going down there in armed civil disobedience, in fact, what we're trying to do is restore the law, is shore up the law. They are, in fact, the lawbreakers, not us. All right? And yet, when you get to this point, it requires a certain amount of grit, a certain amount of determination. I mean, all of the philosophy in the world, if you're not willing to put your body in front of the threat, doesn't mean a thing. And that's what was so gratifying about seeing these hundreds of men and women of all ages, of all races, just coming together and saying, we're here to uphold the law. We're here to uphold the Constitution. You are violating the law. You are violating the Constitution. But here we are. Try to work your will upon us or get out of our way. And they got out of our way.
What do you think the impression now is left with the chief down there with McManus, based on the earlier statements and what originally happened that brought all this about? Is he a little nervous now, you think?
From what we understand, he's quite a bit nervous.
But I believe that the mainstream media, very dangerous entity, probably the single most dangerous entity we face in this country today, far worse than Barack Obama, because they are now actively pushing, and they're out of the closet. It used to be, prior to Obama's election, that they lied about their agenda. They tried to hide it. They covered it up. They swore there was no bias. We all know now. And it's going to be fun to watch them try to put that lack of objectivity and their bias back in a box when they try to, quote-unquote, objectively cover the 2014 and the 2016 campaigns. That's a joke in and of itself. How do you feel now? Did the media give you any coverage? See, they're going to do everything to make you look like the idiot and McManus look like the superstar here. I'll ask you the same question that I asked Alan Gottlieb, can we win this battle without the media's assistance?
Oh, yes.
The truth?
Because we have alternative media now. We're quite empowered by the Internet and some of the other outlets that are available. Absolutely. I mean, the Soviet Empire fell when they brought Xerox machines into their offices. and there were no longer central printing plants that churned out the propaganda. And these Xerox machines were available after hours to the dissidents who went in and printed leaflets called Samizdat. All right, we're awash in alternate means of circulating our Samizdat. We can do that, and we are continuing to do that. And Fast and Furious is certainly a perfect example of that. It requires determination. It requires that determined minority of people who are willing to stand in the gap. And what was Buckley's thing? Stand athwart history, shouting stop. Well, we're to that point. I mean, we have backed up and backed up and backed up for 100 years. Certainly in terms of gun rights, ever since the National Firearms Act in the 30s. And each time we've backed up grumbling. Well, we're to the point now where if we wish to remain free, if we wish to have the same rights that we had growing up accrue to our children and our grandchildren, now is the time to stand. Now is the time to get in their face and say, no, you will not do this, or else.
Hey, you're out here, Chief. How's it going?
What's happening, dude?
Alex Jones.
Hey, Alex.
Did you join the speeches and stuff?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I hope they get rid of that unconstitutional city ordinance. What do you say?
Well, we'll see what happens.
I had a question for you. We ended up speaking to an officer who told us that, yeah, we're just filming you guys up at that building over there, which you could clearly see officers filming us. They said, yeah, we're just filming you because it's a large gathering. You said it's about large gatherings. There's been plenty of large gatherings before that's not been filmed. You're filming it, just tell me the truth. You're filming it because it's a Second Amendment rally.
I'm filming it because I'm worried about any repercussions if something evil or nefarious or bad were to happen.
I'm not questioning it. I'm wondering what the intel is as to why they have to film us all.
We don't put our intel out there.
Here's my issue. The police support the Second Amendment, which most of them do. We like them. Overall, they're good. We're glad this is going off as a good event. Separately, like when the police last time sent me the terror attack on Austin a few months ago that was imminent from the Department of Defense, and then it turned out it was fake. The feds were just scaremongering people, and the police still have to respond to those threats even if they're fake. But that's how Homeland Security creates the fear to then justify things. But separately, with all the people on Prozac-type drugs in a city of millions of people, there are unstable folks. I'm happy the police are armed, and I'm happy we're armed. What do you think, Chief, about the Second Amendment?
I think that all the amendments, people have the right to exercise their constitutional rights.
Would you confiscate guns if given federal orders to do so?
You're asking me hypotheticals.
Yes, that's
not going there. Hypothetical.
Would you?
Again, I can't even begin to guess what I would do as far as a hypothetical situation you're speaking of. I haven't been given an order like that. So.
But they did it in New Orleans. They went to high and dry areas and took the guns. And then a federal law had to be written saying that was illegal. There was already a law. But, what's that, the Hatch Act?
You would obey it.
You're not going to get promoted up to the Justice Department if you answer this right. Say, I will take the guns from the American scum, and you could probably become the head of Homeland Security.
I will take them from your cold, dead hands. Say that.
Just say, I'm coming for you, American scum. We're going to get your guns. If you say that, you're going to the top.
DHS.
White House. You'll be like Arte Saveda. You'll be up there with Obama. You'll be powerful. Just do it. Just say, I hate American scum. We'll get your guns, and you'll be working for the feds making $400,000 a year.
All right, thanks for coming out to the 2013 Line in the Sand. Come and take a San Antonio event. Everyone line up over here for the walk. Now, I do have to remind you that this is not a permitted parade walk. They will not be closing the roads for us.
Yay! Come and take it! Who street? Our street! Who street? Our street! Who street? Our street! Live free or die! Live free or die! Live free or die! Live free or die!
He was very kind, very gracious, and directed us for the purposes of your demonstration to allow the demonstration to go. All although you did not comply with the law, did not comply with our request to get a permit, the demonstration is now over. We went through the park.
The demonstration's not over because I'm still demonstrating my right to bear arms.
At this time, I'm going to go ahead and ask everyone to leave.
I'm going to go ahead
We will
and
have 5 minutes to leave this park.
The Bill of Rights protects every American's God-given right to keep and bear arms. Now that right is being seriously undermined as legally registered rifles are being confiscated in some parts of our country. If we're not careful, we may find ourselves with no right to own guns, and that's where Gun Owners of America comes in. Gun Owners of America is in Washington every day fighting for you to keep that right. Congressman Ron Paul has called GOA the only no-compromise gun lobby in Washington. You need to be part of this great grassroots group of activists who are keeping the heat on their members of Congress. Find out right now how you can join. Call 888-886-GUNS and get started receiving their fact-filled newsletters and action alerts. Call 888-886-GUNS or go to their webpage at gunowners.org and help make your voice heard in Washington. Make that call right now and call Gun Owners of America at 888-886-GUNS. Remember, it's not just about gun control, it's about control.